Revenge office stories. You know the saying, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. People usually say it to wave off a woman's anger, to call it hysterical or crazy. But sometimes, fury isn't about hysterics. Sometimes it's a cold, calculated rage born from pure betrayal. Sometimes it's about justice. My name is Elena, and this is how I, a 37-year-old woman they thought was washed up, brought an entire company to its knees and watched the careers of the two men who wronged me go up in flames. This is a story about incompetence, arrogance, and the colossal mistake of underestimating the person who built your kingdom. They called me finished. A 37-year-old woman, tossed aside like yesterday's news. As my two smug bosses fired me, they said I was no longer a good fit. But in their rush to get rid of me, they forgot one tiny, crucial detail. They never turned off my access. From the comfort of my own home, I was about to make damn sure they'd never forget my name. And it all started 3 months earlier. 3 months before my world came crashing down, I was on top of it. For 8 years, I was the lead systems architect at a tech firm called Innovate Dynamics. Fancy title, right? What it really meant was I was the ghost in the machine. I designed, built, and maintained the entire server infrastructure the company ran on. Every product, every internal system, every single thing that made the company money ran on a digital backbone I had personally built from scratch. When I started, we were just a handful of people with a dream. I was there on weekends, running on cheap pizza and bad coffee, fixing server crashes and coding until my fingers went numb. I poured my life into that company. It wasn't just a job, it was my creation. I knew its digital guts better than I knew myself. I knew every strength, every weakness, and every single shortcut. Our bosses, the co-founders, were Mark and David. In the early days, we were a team. They had the big ideas, and I had the skills to make them real. But as the money rolled in, so did their egos. Success changed them. They went from partners to slick, corporate overlords who saw people as numbers on a spreadsheet. They started taking credit for wins that weren't theirs and pointing fingers for their own bad decisions. The place went from a hub of innovation to a snake pit of office politics and fear. The loyalty and respect we started with, they tore up that contract without a second thought. I was 37, a woman in a man's tech world, and I felt the shift. I wasn't their brilliant architect anymore. I was the legacy system. They started hiring younger, cheaper guys in their early 20s who looked at Mark and David like they were gods. Suddenly, my experience wasn't an asset. It was a liability. It meant I was stuck in my ways. The last project I led was the biggest in the company's history, Project Chimera. It was my masterpiece. 2 years of relentless work. I designed a new server architecture that would triple our capacity. The launch was perfect. Clients were thrilled. The company's stock soared. At the launch party, Mark and David gave a big speech, taking all the credit for the visionary leadership. They never said my name. Not once. That should have been the final red flag. 2 weeks later, I was called into a cold, glass conference room. Mark and David sat there, trying to look grim, but I saw a flicker of triumph in their eyes. The HR manager, a woman I had barely spoken to, sat with them, holding a folder. "Elena," Mark started, his voice oozing fake sincerity. "The company is moving in a new strategic direction." David jumped in. "And we've decided your role is no longer a good fit for that direction." I was floored. I couldn't breathe. Not a good fit? I just launched the biggest project in our history. Our systems have never been better. "Yes, and we appreciate your contributions," Mark said, like he was patting a dog on the head. "But we're looking for fresh perspectives, new energy." The message was loud and clear. I was old, stale, a 37-year-old woman past her prime. The HR manager slid the folder across the table. My severance. It was the bare minimum, a slap in the face for 8 years of my life. "Your access will be terminated effective immediately," she said flatly. Security will escort you out. The humiliation was a physical weight. I looked at Mark and David, men I once considered partners, and saw nothing but cold satisfaction. They had juiced me up and thrown me away. They saw me as disposable. The betrayal was so deep it made me sick. They walked me out of the building like a criminal. As the door closed behind me, all I felt was shock, rage, and a helplessness that ached in my bones. They thought they had won. They thought it was over. But they had no idea it was just beginning. That first week was a fog of anger and disbelief. I spent my days polishing my resume and my nights staring at the ceiling, replaying that humiliating meeting in my head. I felt like a ghost. The company I'd built was humming along without me, and the two men who'd wrecked my career were probably celebrating. Then, about 10 days after I was fired, everything changed. I was cleaning up my laptop, deleting old bookmarks. On pure muscle memory, I typed in the address for Innovate Dynamics internal network. I was expecting an access denied error. That's standard procedure. Your credentials should be dead before you're even out the door. But the error never came. The login page just loaded. My heart started pounding. It had to be a glitch. On a whim, I typed in my old username and password. I hit enter, waiting for the rejection. Login successful. Welcome, Elena. The words glowed on the screen. I froze. It was impossible. How could they be that incompetent? In their arrogant hurry to get rid of me, the one person who knew their entire system inside and out, they committed the cardinal sin of IT security. They never offboarded me. My admin credentials, the literal keys to the kingdom, were still active. I logged out and logged back in just to be sure. It worked. I had full, unrestricted access. I could see everything. Server dashboards, internal emails, all of it. It was like being tossed out of a fortress, only to be handed the master key on your way out. For a second, I thought about doing the right thing. I could quietly email the head of IT, a guy I hired, and tell him about his massive security hole. I could be the bigger person. But then I pictured Mark and David's smug faces. I heard the words, no longer a good fit. The helplessness I'd been drowning in was replaced by something else. A cold, clear sense of opportunity. They had underestimated me. They didn't respect me enough to even do their jobs properly. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to help them. I was going to teach them a lesson about what happens when you scorn the wrong woman. My anger sharpened into a plan. Revenge, I realized, is really about taking back the power that was stolen from you. And I had been left completely powerless. Now, the power was literally at my fingertips. I wasn't going to be impulsive. I'm an architect. I plan things. And I was about to plan a deconstruction. For the next few weeks, I became a digital phantom. I'd log in late at night, bouncing my connection through proxy servers to hide my tracks. I moved through their systems like a ghost. I didn't change a thing. I just watched. With my admin access, I started digging through Mark and David's emails. And what I found was a cesspool. They were conspiring to push out another partner, faking quarterly reports for investors, and expensing lavish personal trips as client entertainment. They weren't just bad bosses, they were crooks. And that settled it. This wasn't just personal anymore. This was a course correction. I quietly downloaded every incriminating email, every doctored spreadsheet, and every fake expense report. I saved it all to an encrypted hard drive that never touched the internet. That was my insurance policy. But it wasn't the main event. What they did to me was a technical insult, so my response had to be technical. They had discarded the architect. Now I was going to show them what happens when the foundations crumble. With a mountain of their dirty secrets stashed away, I turned my attention to the company's digital heart. My initial rage had cooled into a block of ice. This wouldn't be simple vandalism. It would be a work of art, a symphony of destruction, conducted from my quiet home office. It had to be meticulous, patient, and thorough. It had to be me. My goal wasn't just chaos. I wanted to perform a surgical strike, dismantling the very systems they were so proud of, the ones they took credit for, in a way that would be almost impossible to trace or fix. They didn't appreciate the architect, so I would unbuild her masterpiece, brick by digital brick. I spent the next month on the most dangerous project of my life. My days were for job applications and pretending everything was normal. My nights were for war. First, I mapped out the network again. The new team they'd hired, they were sloppy. They'd left gaping security holes and failed to set up proper alerts. Amateurs. Their incompetence made my job so much easier. My main targets were the 180 virtual servers running Project Chimera. Taking them down wouldn't just crash the app. It would wipe the company's main product off the face of the earth. I started writing scripts. Not crude, delete all commands, but elegant, nasty little pieces of code. One script was designed to delete the virtual servers one by one, with a random delay of 5 to 15 minutes between each one. This slow bleed would make it look like a cascading hardware failure, not an attack. Another script was for the backups. I knew that was their only safety net. My script wouldn't just delete them. No, it would corrupt them, subtly changing bits of data in each file. The backups would look fine, but when they tried to restore from them, useless. A digital time bomb. Finally, I made a kill switch. A script that would scrub the server logs after the attack was done, wiping every trace of my presence. It would erase my logins, the commands I ran, the scripts themselves. It would be like a ghost wiping its own footprints from the snow. I even gave the master script a private name, Hakai, the Japanese word for destruction. Next, I needed to test it. I used my admin rights to create a small, hidden sandbox on their own servers, a set of virtual machines invisible to the main network. It was a huge risk, but I was betting on their incompetence. For a week, I ran my scripts in the sandbox. The deletion worked flawlessly. The corrupted backups failed to restore. The log wiper left no trace. Perfect. The engineer in me admired the elegant efficiency of the destruction I was about to unleash. I had a close call one night. While I was testing, I saw another admin login, the young IT guy I'd hired. My heart hammered against my ribs. I killed my session instantly and watched him from the shadows. He poked around for 10 minutes, saw nothing, and logged out. He never even knew I was there. He was a child walking through a minefield he couldn't see. The plan was set. I'd hit them over a weekend, starting late on Friday night. My scripts would have more than 36 hours to run before anyone noticed. By the time the first person tried to log in on Monday, the entire Chimera platform would be gone. The night before, I felt strangely calm. I was no longer a victim. I was a force of reckoning. I knew the risks. What I was about to do was very illegal, but they had already taken my future and my dignity. What else was there to lose? I had my insurance policy on Mark and David. I had my flawless plan, and I had the conviction that I was doing this for everyone they'd ever chewed up and spit out. They built their empire on the backs of people like me. I was just delivering the bill. As I sat there, my finger hovering over the execute key, I pictured their smug faces one last time. Finished, I whispered to the empty room. We'll see who's finished. Friday night, I waited until 11:59 p.m., 1 minute to midnight. It felt right. I brewed a strong cup of black coffee, the same kind that had fueled me while building the very systems I was about to destroy. The irony tasted bitter. My office was dark, lit only by 3 monitors. On the left, a real-time health dashboard of the server cluster. In the middle, the terminal window, with my Hakai script ready to go. On the right, a live feed of system logs. My heart was a steady drum. This was it. No turning back. I took a breath, typed the execution command, and hit enter. The script confirmed, initializing protocol Hakai. Target, 180 virtual servers. Commencing systematic deletion. Almost instantly, a small green light on the dashboard flickered to red. Server VM Chimera 001, offline, 1 down. 179 to go. The script then paused, waiting 11 minutes and 42 seconds before next operation. I leaned back, the tension in my shoulders immense. All I could do now was watch. For the next 36 hours, I was a silent sentinel, watching my creation be unmade. Every few minutes, another light would turn red. VM Chimera 002, offline. VM Chimera 003, offline. Each one was a satisfying beat in my symphony of destruction. I stayed awake all night. By Saturday morning, a third of the infrastructure was gone. No alarms. No one logged in. Their weekend support was a joke, and my attack was designed to fly right under the radar. They were expecting a bomb, not a quiet corrosion. By Sunday evening, the dashboard was a sea of red. At 11:30 p.m., the final server went offline. VM Chimera 180, offline. Then the final phase. My kill switch script kicked in, scrubbing the logs, erasing my digital footprints. My last act was to run the backup corruption script one final time. Then I logged out, deleted the VPN software, and physically destroyed the drive with the scripts. It was done. The trap was set. Monday morning, I woke up feeling strangely empty. I made coffee and sat by the window, picturing the chaos unfolding miles away. Around 8:05 a.m., I imagined the first frantic call. An employee getting an error message. Then another. By 9 a.m., their office had to be in full-blown panic. I pictured the young IT team staring at a dashboard of red lights, completely out of their depth, trying to reboot servers that didn't exist anymore. Around 10:30 a.m., I got a text from a friend in marketing. All hell has broken loose. Chimera is completely down. No one knows what's happening. I replied, wow, that's crazy. Hope they figure it out. The real satisfaction came that afternoon. My friend texted again. Mark and David are losing their minds. I saw David screaming at the IT director. They think it's a hardware failure. Now they're trying to restore from backups. I smiled. This was the moment. An hour later, another text. The backups are corrupt. All of them. They're not working. Elena, the data is just gone. Gone. Their main source of revenue, erased. This wasn't a reboot. They'd have to rebuild everything from scratch, a task that took me years. The financial loss would be catastrophic. The climax wasn't a loud explosion. It was the dawning horror on Mark and David's faces as they realized their safety net was gone. They had fired the one person on Earth who could have fixed it. They would blame the IT team, the vendors, anyone but themselves. But I knew, and that was all that mattered. They were standing in the smoking ruins of an empire I'd built for them, and they had no idea the architect was the one who lit the match. The days that followed were a masterclass in corporate implosion, and I had a front row seat from my couch. My friend inside kept up a running commentary. The panic at Innovate Dynamics quickly turned into a nasty blame game. Mark and David's first move was to publicly blame their hosting provider for a catastrophic hardware failure. But the hosting company wasn't about to take the fall. They released their own statement clarifying that their hardware was fine and that the servers had been systematically deleted by an admin account. They couldn't name names, but the message was clear. This was an inside job. The word sabotage started popping up in tech articles. The company's stock plummeted. Clients, unable to access their data, started threatening lawsuits. The financial bleeding was fast and deep. Internally, it was toxic. Mark and David, in a predictable move to save their own skins, publicly fired the entire IT department. They were made the scapegoats, their careers ruined. That part was cruel. It was unjust. And it's why I decided it was time for Act 2. Anonymously, I sent a package to the board of directors and a prominent tech journalist. Inside was a single USB drive and a note. The real problem at Innovate Dynamics isn't in the servers. It's in the executive suite. The password is no longer a good fit. On that drive was everything. The fake financial reports, the fraudulent expenses, the emails. All of it. The fallout was nuclear. The journalist published a bombshell exposé. Faced with undeniable evidence of fraud, the board had no choice. Mark and David were fired, terminated for cause. No severance, no golden parachute. Just a box for their things and a security guard to walk them out the door. The poetic justice was so thick I could taste it. In the end, Innovate Dynamics was acquired for pennies on the dollar by a competitor. The name became a quiet cautionary tale in the industry about arrogance. So where does that leave me? I watched them burn. Their careers, their reputations, all turned to ash. Was it worth it? There's a part of me that barely recognizes the cold, calculating person I became. I broke the law. I risked my freedom. And innocent people got caught in the crossfire. That's a heavy weight to carry. But when I think about the alternative, letting them get away with it, letting that injustice eat me alive, I know I made the only choice I could. My actions weren't just about revenge. They were about reclaiming my dignity. They were about exposing the truth. They underestimated me, and in doing so, they handed me the weapon I needed to make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. I never went back to that industry. The experience, as empowering as it was, soured it for me. I went back to school and became a landscape architect. I trade digital worlds for real ones now. I build things that grow. It's quiet work. I found a new life, far from the egos and toxicity of the tech world. Mark and David? They're ghosts from a past life. I sometimes wonder if they ever figured it out. If, in a quiet moment, they ever suspected the finished 37-year-old woman they threw away was the author of their downfall. I hope they do. I hope it keeps them up at night. They wanted to erase me. Instead, I erased them. They thought they were closing a door on my career. What they really did was open one to the rest of my life. Thank you for listening to my story. It's a reminder that sometimes the people you overlook are the ones you should fear the most. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and share your own stories about toxic bosses in the comments. We've all got one. In the end, this was never just about servers or code. It was about respect. It was about a system that lets arrogant men wield power without accountability. My story is extreme, I know, but the feeling of being betrayed is universal. I learned that real power isn't your job title. It's knowing your own worth and refusing to let anyone else define it for you. They tried to write the end of my story, so I took the pen back and wrote my own. And I like my ending a hell of a lot better